Bonjour à tous, je vais vous parler de l'essai d'IA sur le développement de deux thèmes différents dans le livre ou les contes que vous avez étudiés. À votre avis, lequel de ces thèmes est le plus important? So, let's have a look at this essay from Dia and let's have a look at all the good things that she's done. First of all, we need to look carefully at the title here, which is the one that you all did for your mock exam. And the most important thing is obviously the fact that we're looking at two different themes that run through the book. Now it's important to consider themes as aspects that can be found throughout the book rather than anecdotal aspects that can only be found in certain passages. So deux thèmes différents dans le livre. And the second part of the essay question is lequel de ces thèmes est le plus important. So that's also very important to have a look at which one of those two themes that you're going to choose to develop are according to you the most important one. In terms of the structure of the essay, I would be looking at 3 parts plus introduction conclusion if I was to really sort of develop and analyze this question properly. Part 1 would be the first theme, part 2 would be the second theme, and then finally the third part would be dedicated to the one that I think is prominent. You can also possibly develop your conclusion and develop your the most important of those two themes within the conclusion. Don't analyze 3 themes just for the sake of it, or to impress your examiner. If it says 2, stick to 2. Okay, now let's have a look at the introduction by Dia, which goes like this. Le Petit Prince est un livre écrit par Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, publié en 1943 à New York. Le livre est principalement pour les enfants, mais à cause des thèmes philosophiques, il est aussi apprécié par les adultes. L'histoire raconte les aventures du Petit Prince et elle commence sur sa planète astéroïde B612 et elle finit sur la Terre. Le livre est à la fois le livre le plus lu et le plus traduit dans la langue française. Une des raisons pour lesquelles ce livre est si populaire est qu'il traite des thèmes touchants qui sont toujours applicables, surtout actuellement. Dans cette rédaction, je vais analyser le développement des deux thèmes du livre, l'amour, l'amitié et l'importance de voir au-delà des apparences. There's a nice clear introduction here, which has a little bit of background presentation here. Just a quick little bit about the story itself and the fact that it's one of the most read books in the world. And then finally, it kind of narrows down quite skillfully here in that bit where it says une des raisons pour lesquelles ce livre est si populaire et qu'il traite des thèmes touchants qui sont toujours applicables, surtout actuellement. So what the candidate has done here is she's narrowed it down. She's trying to sort of disclose what the essay title is going to be in a skillful way with this kind of transitional phrase there. And then she's actually announcing what she's going to do in that sentence. Dans cette rédaction, je vais analyser le développement des deux thèmes du livre, l'amour, l'amitié et l'importance de voir au-delà des apparences. So nice introduction. The introduction doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be detailed, can be prepared in advance. And I think here the candidate has done very well with linking up the essay title with the introduction. Generally speaking, when you do an essay, you always have to refer back to your initial question and ask yourself, am I answering the question? It is quite easy to get carried away with how much you know about the book rather than the actual essay question itself. It is not about putting everything that you know into your essay. It's not about that. It's about answering the question properly with an element of depth. Moving on now to the first part, which goes like this. En premier lieu, le thème le plus important est l'amour et l'amitié. Quand le petit prince rencontre la rose, il l'admire pour sa beauté, il l'aime. Cependant, à mon avis, la rose n'apprécie pas le petit prince, ce qui incite le petit prince à quitter sa planète. Il dit au narrateur qu'il était trop jeune de savoir aimer. C'est après le géographe dit que les fleurs sont éphémères, que le petit prince commence à comprendre que sa rose n'existera pas toujours. Puis le renard lui apprend l'importance de l'amitié et qu'on est responsable pour ce que l'on apprivoise. Après cela, le petit prince sait qu'il faut retourner à sa planète et être réuni avec sa rose parce qu'il l'aime, bien qu'elle ait des défauts. Au commencement de l'histoire, malgré le fait que la rose et le petit prince s'aiment l'un et l'autre, ils ne sont pas heureux. Mais grâce à l'enseignement du renard, le prince comprend que la rose est importante pour le temps qu'il a perdu pour elle. À la fin du livre, le lecteur réalise que sans amour, l'être humain est seul et perdu dans le désert comme le narrateur au début du récit. Donc ce thème est le plus important du livre. Okay, that was the first part. Now clearly announced there is l'amour et l'amitié. Right, so we can't really get mistaken here. It's very well laid out and very clear. Then a little bit of an account on what's going on between the prince and the rose. Okay, the meeting with the fox, le renard, and it goes up to here more or less, and then after that a little bit of analysis. So I quite like the structure of this. This is quite nice, and what I really like about it is the end bit there, this bit there. À la fin du livre, le lecteur réalise que sans amour, l'être humain est seul et perdu dans le désert. So I like the way that the candidate extrapolates, sort of opens up to consideration on human nature rather than sticks to the character in the book. So I think that looks very good in the essay there at the end. This is a proper example of in-depth analysis. Maybe it would have warranted a bit more development, that particular sentence, but nonetheless very good indeed. Okay, there are a few little mistakes or awkward sort of turn of phrases rather than mistakes. C'est après que le géographe, so we would really need the que there in that particular part of the essay, for instance. But generally speaking, very high level of language. It's a redrafted essay, for the record, but nonetheless really good. So that's about it for this first part. Now, coming back to the choice of l'amour et l'amitié, I think this would have been maybe better to include this under an umbrella term such as les sentiments rather than l'amour et l'amitié. They're not exactly quite the same thing in the book. Should they really go together? I'm not sure. And if they do, I would really sort of put them under the title Les sentiments humains or les sentiments positifs entre les personnages, something like this. But one appears to be a bit more straightforward than the other. They have things in common, like the idea that they have to be nurtured, that you have to tame the person before you can love that person, either in a friendly way or in a romantic way. But, they're not exactly quite the same thing. It seems to be a little bit more difficult when it comes to love than friendship in the book. So maybe that's something that should have been mentioned. The last part now reads like this, or the second part of the essay. En deuxième lieu, un thème récurrent est l'importance de voir au-delà des apparences pour découvrir ce qui est important dans une personne, par exemple sa personnalité. Au début du livre, Saint-Exupéry enseigne au lecteur cette importance avec l'utilisation de l'anecdote du serpent bois. Ouvert, cette anecdote démontre que les enfants voient mieux ou plus que les adultes, car chaque dessin, il sait qu'il est un serpent boa. Saint-Exupéry suggère une autre fois que les adultes ont des difficultés de voir au-delà des apparences, ce qui se manifeste dans l'anecdote de l'astronome turc. Cette anecdote montre que les adultes nous jugent sur l'apparence. Toutefois, après avoir rencontré le renard, le petit prince et le lecteur apprend qu'on ne voit bien qu'avec le cœur, l'essentiel est invisible pour les yeux. Saint-Exupéry nous révèle le secret de la vie avec cette citation, d'après moi. Pour bien connaître une personne, il faut voir au-delà des apparences. Now that's very good, I think. Now the beyond appearances theme is definitely one I would have picked. That's a theme that probably is the most sort of the core of the book, really. That idea, and it runs within the fabric of other themes like love and friendship, because clearly for love and friendship to develop, you need to look beyond appearances. in those fields as well. So I think that's a very wise choice. Right, so looking at this a bit more carefully, good use of an anecdote here to illustrate what children can see, the fact that also the candidate has referred, really has transferred the real meaning of the book, that only children seem to be able to see beyond appearances, use their imagination to see beyond appearances. And from this onwards, really quite good analytical depth there. Les adultes ont des difficultés de voir au-delà des apparences. Great. Ce qui se manifeste dans l'anecdote de l'astronome turc. Right, and then a little bit about the anecdote here. I like the use of the quote, obviously, which is the most famous one in the book. That sits really well within the essay there, and the quote is used appropriately to illustrate an idea. Saint-Exupéry nous révèle le secret de la vie avec cette citation, d'après moi, pour bien connaître une personne, il faut voir au-delà des apparences. Right, so it's nice as well, once again, opening up onto a more general, in-depth kind of analysis of human nature and what Saint-Exupéry has tried to reveal. Once again, maybe a little bit superficial in terms of the analysis here, but clearly the candidate has understood that was a very important point. And we're coming now to the conclusion. Here it goes. Pour conclure, le Petit Prince traite des thèmes des thèmes intemporels comme l'amour, l'amitié et l'importance de voir au-delà des apparences. Je suis persuadé que le thème le plus important dans le livre est l'amour et l'amitié parce que ce thème est bien développé pendant le livre et le Petit Prince commence un voyage initiatique afin de savoir aimer sa fleur. Grâce au renard, le prince apprend l'importance de l'amitié et il apprend à aimer la rose. Un thème secondaire est les apparences et le lecteur apprend que les apparences sont moins importantes que les personnalités. Okay, interesting conclusion there. The language is good. Je suis persuadé que, used in that structure there. So quite sort of decisive language, which I like there in the conclusion. For me, that conclusion needed a bit more development and needed to bring in maybe some new elements to the essay, some new elements to the analysis. If you've chosen the theme of love and friendship, for instance, I mean, as I said before, I think personally I would have chosen the theme of beyond appearances. But if you're choosing that theme and you're relating it to Voyage Initiatique, I think that needs a bit more of an explanation. What do we mean here by Voyage Initiatique? And maybe relating it to the fact that it's a literary tradition, une tradition littéraire, like in other books like Candide by Voltaire, and in other classic tales of sort of coming of age kind of tales. I think that is a theme that's very important, Le Voyage Initiatique, and that is what the whole story of the book, the whole structure of the book is based on. So I would have developed that, how this little prince goes from being inexperienced and naive to being a lot wiser and a lot more educated to human nature throughout the book by discovering things. We're traveling with the character there, which is kind of mentioned here. Grâce au renard, le petit prince apprend l'importance de l'amitié et à aimer la rose. Yes, indeed, very, very good indeed that the candidate has noticed that. But once again, it's kind of something that's already been said, and it's not bringing in any new elements. Un thème secondaire et les apparences. Now, not sure about finishing on that particular line there, un thème secondaire et les apparences. I'm not quite sure that's necessarily what I would have chosen. It needs maybe for the conclusion to open up onto a deep reflection, maybe a rhetorical question, something along the lines of how the readers themselves, maybe, through that voyage initiatique, they themselves change. Le lecteur aussi évolue avec le personnage du Petit Prince et on n'est pas tout à fait le même quand on commence le livre et quand on le finit. So that kind of idea that, it's also a learning journey for us readers, not just for the character within the book. Right, that is it. I hope you found this interesting and useful. À bientôt. Merci. Au revoir.